My story tonight is titled The Coach. Hey, Tom, we've been friends for many years now, haven't we? Well, yeah, we've been friends since we were in grade school. Well, I have some things that I want to talk to you about that I think you need to address. I think it's time that you put your life together and get back and start doing the things that you love to do. I know that you had an accident a few years back and you're paralyzed and in a wheelchair, but that shouldn't stop you from doing all the things that you love to do. And baseball was one of those things that's been taken away from you. But I think that you could get back into baseball again. Well, how can I get back into baseball? I can't throw the ball, I can't bat, I can't field a ball. Well, there's other things you can do. You can be a coach. Well, who's going to have me as a coach? I couldn't even get out of the way of a ball if it was hit. Well, I'm talking about coach of a little league team. Read this article here. The article states that there's a team with young boys that nobody wanted them. All the coaches didn't want them to play on their team, so they put them all on one team, and they don't have a coach to teach them. And I know that would be right up your alley, because I know you could handle those boys. God's put the things inside you and all the talents and abilities, and I know you need to do that. Well, I don't have that. I don't think I could do that. Well, just think about it, because I think you'd really be good at it. Well, I got to leave now. I got to run some errands, but we'll get back together later tonight and go out for dinner. So later on, Tom started thinking about what Bob had said, and he grabbed the article in the paper and he read it. And he put it down, and the longer he was away from that article, it just kept bothering him, kept thinking about it in his mind over and over again. All night he was thinking about it. And when he got up the next morning, he knew that the Lord had spoke to his heart, that that was what he was going to be doing, that those boys needed to be taught the principles of life and baseball. So the next morning he called Bob on the phone and told him that he decided to be the coach of that team. Then he turned around and called the person that was in charge of the Little League in the town and told him that he would like to take over that team. And they were all excited because nobody wanted to take them. He said, I'd fax you all the information. So later on in the day, he faxed all the information of all the boys. And he called each one of them up on the phone and told them who he was and that he was going to have their first practice tomorrow night. One thing that he found out when he was talking to the official of the team is they're already 2 weeks behind in practice, and the first game is going to be in 2 weeks. So he had a lot of things to do with these boys. So he went to the phone and called his friend Bob, and he told Bob he was going to need some help. And he said, don't worry, buddy. He said, we got your back covered. I already talked to some of the guys on the team, and when we're not on the road with the team, we're going to be here helping you with the boys. He says, well, I got my first practice tomorrow night. He says, well, we'll be there at 5 o'clock to help you. So the next day, Tom was getting all excited and he's writing down all the stuff that he wanted to do and bring up to the boys and just try to think of all the things that he could possibly tell these boys. And when he got to the field, all of his ex-teammates were there to help him. They set up the bases and they kind of decided what they were going to do as a game plan. And when the boys came, they were all excited because they had never had a coach that was a professional baseball player before and never had any players from a team that ever came to show them what to do. So they started going through all the fundamentals, and each one of the teachers were trying to show the boys how to play first base, second base, all of them. And so they practiced for a couple hours, and then Tom told them, thanks for the good practice. Come back tomorrow night. And next week too, because our first game is in 2 weeks. So they left, and all the guys went out for dinner, and they put all their plans together, just what they were going to do. They decided that first they had to find out what was the strength of each of the boys. They wanted not just anybody on first base, they wanted the one that was going to be the best for the team there. And the same for all the other positions. So each of them picked out the boys they thought that could handle those positions. And so they made the roster up. the next day when they had practice, Tom got in front of the boys and he told them that he wanted to put together the best team he possibly could on the field. And there's a lot of positions that some of the other boys want to play, and he's not going to put them in those positions because they're better in another spot. And he told each one of them, he says, guys, all I want you to do is give 100%. He says, and remember that if you make mistakes, you're going to have your buddy behind you that's going to back you up. So don't worry if the ball gets past you, because the person coming up behind you is going to help. We're going to work as a team. We're not going to be individual guys. So that night, all of his ex-teammates came to help, and every one of them stood alongside of each one of those boys and gave them pointers on how to play all those positions and how to handle the ball and what to do and what to come up with and a plan in their head for the next play. And this went on all that week and part of the next week, and it was getting close to the time of their first game. In that last meeting, Tom got them all together, and he said, guys, I have a special person that wants to come here and talk to you. And he said his name is Mr. Martin. He's the owner of the ball team. He wants to come and tell you a few things. So his ex-boss, the owner of the Major League Baseball team, stood in front of those young boys. And he says, guys, he says, I know you had a lot of my employees here helping you. He says, in fact, you have some of my coaches helping you to pitch and to bat. And he says, I just want you to know that my whole team is here to help you, including me. He says, we can't be with you when we're on the road. Next weekend, we're on the road on the West Coast, so we won't be able to be with you in your first game. He says, but I want you to know that we're going to be with you. And he says, here's what I have for the guys. So he opened up a box, and here was bands that they were going to wear on their shirts, on their arms. It had the colors of the Pirates on it, had a little baseball picture on it, and a number for each one of those players that was playing that position. And they were going to wear those through the game. And he says, in fact, here's my tie I'm going to wear for all the games. And he showed him his tie. It had nothing but a bunch of little baseballs on it and all the numbers of all the boys on the team. And he says, I just want to let you know that we're behind you 100%, even when we're not with you. And I want to tell you something, Tom. I have a promise for you that if any of your boys make it into college baseball, they'll have a chance to be in tryouts for my team. So he said, you guys win. Let us know how you do on Saturday. So a few days later, the ball team left to go on the road, and game day came. Tom had a few of the fathers come and be the coach for first base and third base. And he had headsets so he could tell them what he wanted the guys to do. So they got to the field that day, and they were the visiting team. So they got to bat first. All the boys were afraid, and Tom got them aside and said, now don't be nervous, don't be afraid. He says, we're just out here to have fun. But just remember, guys, just give me 100%. And remember, you got your teammate behind you to back you up. God's given you the ability to play and the ability to learn how to play. So let's go out and have fun. So the very first batter got up, and 3 pitches he struck out. He was all rejected, and Tom got him aside as he came back to the dugout. And he says, don't get discouraged. He says, did you give me 100%? Yes, sir, I did. He says, well, you know, pro players, they don't get hits every time either. So just wait for your next time at bat and just try to do better. The next boy got up, and he struck out also. So then the third boy came up to bat, and they walked him. The next boy got up to bat, and he got a hit. So they had 2 men on. Then all of a sudden, Tom did something that the other coach never expected. He told the guy on second base that he wanted him to steal. So as soon as the pitch started, off he went. He told him, I want you to run as fast as you can like a junkyard dog chasing you. And that boy took off, and he made it to third base. Then their batter was at the plate, and he gave him the sign to bunt. When he did, the other team was so out of focus because they didn't expect a bunt or a steal. They didn't know where to throw to. They didn't know if they were supposed to get the guy out at third base, the guy coming from first to second, or try to get the guy on first. So they had 2 men on. Then the next boy came up and he got a hit. They drove 1 run in. So they were all excited about that, and then the next one struck out. Stop them from scoring on us. So the whole game went that way, and when it ended, it was still 1-0 at the end of the game. Tom's team had won. He had a meeting with his boys, and he told them, he says, guys, what we did was we changed the game plan for the other team. They didn't expect anything of what we was going to do. We totally fouled up their pitcher and their catcher. They didn't know who to throw to or what to throw. We're going to have to keep doing that the rest of the season. So as their season went on and on, they won quite a few games. The other professional players came and helped them practice every single day when they were in town, and the boys were just getting better and better all the time. Finally, at the end of the season, Tom's team was in third place, and they were to get a trophy. And then Tom went up and he took the trophy from the head of the league there, and then he turned and he told all the other coaches, he said, guys, he says, every one of the guys on my team you didn't want. And he said, this year we were in third place. I'm going to coach next year, and you guys better bring the game because we're going to be in first place next year. So you're going to have to be accountable and play us every year because I'm going to be coaching these boys. And if you have players that you don't want on your team, just send them my way because there's none of these boys that can't play baseball. If you just take the time that you care. So the games went on the next season. Tom's team, over the years, Tom's team won several first places, and it just kept getting more and more. All of the boys wanted to play on his team, even the good players, not just the bad players. After several years, the boys started, when they had their final banquet for the teams that year, Tom would always have a party the next night for his team alone. And the one time the boys got up at the end there and they walked up, because Mr. Martin was there with his ball team. And Tommy was one of the players on the team, and he kind of became the captain. And so he spoke, and he went to Mr. Martin. He says, Mr. Martin, I want to thank you for all the help that you have given to all of us boys over all these years. And we want to present you with this. And he reached in a bag, and he pulled out a game ball. And on that ball, they had the year written on it and all the names of all the boys that were playing on the team. Mr. Martin looked at that ball and started getting tears. And then he said, you guys, he said, out of all the trophies and awards that I've ever had, this is the most important one that I've ever gotten. This is going to be front and center in my showcase. And then he sat down. And then Tommy went over to Tom and he said, we want you to have this. So they gave him a game ball. On that, they put the date and all their names. And for that moment on, they kept, every year, the boys would sign a ball, date it and sign it and give it to Tom. Tom's well in his 90s now, and he still is a coach, but he knows he's not going to be able to coach much longer, but he wants to do it as long as he can. And every year, it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. So finally, when he has his party, now all the old players that played for him come with their children now to his party. Because they're all family. Here they still give the game ball out. And Mr. Martin has long passed on, but his family runs the team now. And his son spoke at the last party that they had, and he told Tom that he has had 5 boys that played for him that are professional ball. He said, we wanted to keep Dad's promise to you and to the boys. So that went on for years and years. And then finally Tom passed away and new coaches took over. But it was a tradition that they started, that God gave somebody the ability to take some boys that needed help and to guide them through life, not just to be a ball player, but to be a young man too, to have the character and the drive to keep things going against all obstacles. You have a blessed evening.